on to our topic for today and talk about self-managing your rental properties and when it's time to hire a pro. So I'd like to start by walking you through a few of the skills that you actually need to have when you manage your own properties. I've been doing this for 15 years, so this is my personal opinion on the topic. And everybody has a different experience. For example, the location, the demographics, where your rental portfolio is, will have a big impact on what your experience is. But these are some general points that apply for everybody. So advertising and marketing is a big part, maybe not so much at the moment because we have such a rental shortage that even if your advertising and marketing sucks, you will still get people looking at your property. Facilitating showings. So it's a lot of work to be there, to walk people through the building, answer their questions. Then you have to review applications. You have to do background checks. That is also something that requires some skills, some experience, how to do that, where to do that. And probably most importantly, what to look for when you're looking at these things. Then you have repairing and construction issues. So, real estate breaks down and you need to diagnose what's wrong with it, why is it wrong, and how do you fix it. And then having a qualified contract available, and preferably quickly, because if your air conditioner goes out in July, then it may not be great, or your furnace in January, it may not be great if you have to start looking for a contractor if you don't already have somebody lined up who can do that quickly. Then there are a lot of legal questions. We see that at the RPA, the meetings where we focus a lot on legal issues, on landlord-tenant law, are always very well visited because that is a big topic for all of us. And Wisconsin landlord-tenant law keeps changing. So it's important to stay always on top of that. And of course, you got managing day-to-day issues like, hey, I need a confirmation letter for the school district that I can enroll my kids in the school district. So, just all that random stuff that comes with it. And of course, managing turnover. I've put a relatively wide percentage between 10% and 50% per year. Most people are not going to be looking at, so if you're at 50% per year, then you're doing something wrong, in my opinion. So for most people, it will be more like, 20, 30%. If you're getting close to 10%, you are doing really good. But that means that you have to expect every year a certain number of turnover depending on the size of your portfolio. And you can, when you look through that list, you can rate your skills. Did I have one more? Yeah, I had one more. Dealing with escalating issues. So when things get out of control, get emotional, get heated, now you have to deal with that. So that's a whole nother skill set. And most of us are better at some things than they are at other things. But like everything, training makes you better. So the more you do it, the better you get there. Let's talk about advantages of self-management. And I have done this for many years, so I'm a big believer in self-management until a certain point, and we'll get there. The first thing to me is nobody watches your money or your real estate like you do. You just care more. The other advantage that I see is if you do this yourself, you have a direct contact to the market. You know what's going on. You are there, you talk to people, you look at issues, you look at the property, you have a first-hand experience. You're aware of what's going on. Sometimes there's little issues that you pick up when you go to a property. A property manager might look there, they might see it, but they're like, yeah, that's not important enough to communicate it to the owner. When you are there yourself, you're always aware, you have no filter. You might be able to get a little bit more rent. That goes back to point number one. If it's your own money, you just work a little bit harder for it. The thing is, I'm not a big fan of squeezing the last dollar of rent out of a property. There is a sweet spot, in my opinion. You can take advantage of people that are just desperate and get a little extra. But on the long run, I don't think that makes for a good win-win situation between you and your tenant. You will pay the price in a different way. So I think there is a sweet spot where you can optimize between getting the best possible tenant and also, looking out for your business. But in general, you might be able to get a little bit more rent if you manage yourself. Property condition as issues, as I mentioned before, your first-hand observation, and you also may be able to do repairs for less. The classic example that I always use is changing a light bulb. So if you do this yourself, you're basically looking at the cost of your light bulb because you're not paying yourself a salary. But for a property manager, if they have to dispatch a guy on a company car crossing town, takes half an hour, go take a look and see what's wrong with it. Is it the fixture? Is it the light bulb? And then, going to Home Depot or Menards, getting that part, standing in line, checking out, going back to the property. You can see how a simple light bulb exchange can take 2 or 3 hours. Now, anybody of you who has operated a small business knows what the loaded cost of your employees is. And, just to throw some ballpark numbers out there, it's very hard to keep somebody on staff for under, I would say, 50 to 70 bucks an hour, fully loaded with vehicle and benefits and everything else. So, and the property manager also needs to make a little bit of a profit because, after all, that's why they run a business. So when you look at that, of course, you can get upset when you say, hey, you're charging me this much for changing a light bulb. But when you actually look at it, that's the cost of doing it. So if you do that yourself, you can save a little bit of money. Obviously, you don't have management fees, so that really helps your bottom line. Now, let's talk about disadvantages of self-management, which in turn are the advantages of professional property management. And the first thing here is if you're working in your business, you're not working on your business. And that is a profound difference. And you can get to the point where you're so business working in your business, you're basically an employee to your own business, that you cannot work on your business, you cannot grow it, you cannot make it better because you just don't have the time. Speaking of time, it takes quite a bit of time. I always get asked a question, and it depends. It can vary so much, but if you force me to give you an answer on that, I would say a good ballpark number is 4 hours per month per unit. So do the math with however many units you have. It can vary because single families are different than multifamilies. They require a little bit more management. It also depends on what part of town and what your demographics are, etc. But 4 hours of rent, I think, is a good average. It might be a little bit less, it might be a little bit more. So you can do the math on how much time it actually takes. You will also find yourself doing a lot of $25 an hour tasks. Maybe I should update this to 35. But if you're painting, if you're mowing the lawn, if you're picking up trash in front of your building, then you are doing tasks that don't yield you a really good return on your time. You might be better off looking for another rental property or refinancing a rental property or strategizing or meeting with other investors and thinking about what you could be doing better. That has generally a much better return on investment than doing simple labor tasks. You also might lose the big picture. I noticed that in the Q&A section sometimes with the lunch and learns when I talk to people is their focus shifts so much on the tasks that are in front of them every day that they're not thinking about the bigger picture and where's my goal? Where do I want to be in 5 years and 10 years from now? And the growth of your business is literally limited by your availability. So the way I started, I had a full-time corporate job. I was traveling internationally a lot. So you only have that many hours in the day. My old boss used to say, you have 24 hours every day, and if that's not enough, there's still the night. But at the end, you're somewhat limited. If you're really motivated, I think you can dedicate 40 hours to your rental business on top of the 40 hours that you're working because you have Saturday, Sunday. If it's really important to you, you can dedicate those days and you can probably find an additional 2, 3, or 4 hours from Monday through Friday in the evening where you can work on the business. But then you're not doing anything else. You don't have family time anymore. And it's really limiting. And if you're doing all this, you're not an investor, you are a property manager. And that's depending on how you look at it and where you are in your journey, that may be an advantage or may be a big disadvantage if you want to keep growing. One thing that I've realized over the years is that if you are doing DIY property management on a small scale, you're not good at what you're doing. And I think it's, if you think about other things that you do and you compare an amateur with somebody who's doing that all day, every day, of course your skill is not the same. If maybe you're handy and you work on a car, but you're just not the same as a mechanic who does this all day long. And the same thing is true with property management. You're just not prepared for all the hundreds of things that get thrown at you randomly. Sometimes, everything that you encounter is a first for you. If you work in property management, you have dealt with that situation before. Most likely you're prepared for it. You know what your response is. You know what your action is going to be. So there are certain advantages to DIYing property management, but you really have to think about the advantages and the disadvantages and then be honest with yourself, which is oftentimes not easy, but try to be honest with yourself. Maybe talk to your spouse about it and see, well, where do we fall here? Where are the advantages and disadvantages? And hopefully that can help you making a good decision on that. So when you need professional property management, when do you know it's time? Most investors follow this a similar growth curve. Some have a pause in between. They grow for 5 years, but then something else. They have kids, so nothing happens. But then they get back at it. So whatever that curve looks like, when the volume is getting so much that you feel burned out. Remember what got you into real estate in the first place. You wanted to have a better life. That's why you took the risk. That's why you were working evenings and weekends. And now you start hating it and you're getting burned out. It might be time to look for professional property management. When interacting with tenants is stressing you out. This is hard. Not everybody has the stomach for it. And if it bounces around in your head at night and you're thinking about the heated argument that you may have had with the tenant, then this may not be worth it for you. And for some people, that's a total non-issue, and some people get really stressed out by that. It keeps your business from growing. I think we discussed this before. And you have lazy equity, but you worry about your cash flow. That's related. So what do I mean by that? If you're so worried about the tasks that you have on hand, we had example as my personal life, we had 2 sewer issues this week already. We had a laundry sink that was filling up. And these are mundane issues. These are everyday issues. We know what to do with it. But it's like, holy cow, all of a sudden we got 3 of them to deal with. And so that occupies your mental space. And next week it's something else, and next week it's something else. I don't get into weeds so much anymore, but when it comes to technical issues, I usually get pulled in. But what this does to your brain is your mind is always circling around these issues. You're not thinking about what is the market doing? Should I buy another property this fall? Is this a good market opportunity for me to take advantage of? Because you're thinking about the task on hand or the task in front of you, and that never ends. So if you have enough units, it's just a constant stream of tasks. Lazy equity is basically if you've bought properties, let's say 10 years ago, we've seen earlier in the data, real estate prices have almost but just doubled in the last 10 years, in the last 9 years. And so you're probably sitting on quite a bit of equity on these properties. What are you doing with that? The return on equity, return on investment, I think everybody understands. Return on equity is the money that you have sitting in equity in your property. And what are you returning on that? Or would there be a better use for that equity? Should you pull some money out of that property and invest it in something else? That could even be the stock market. Doesn't have to be real estate. But that is lazy equity. And you start out with 20% down, you have 20% equity, but now you might have 50 or 60 or more. So, what's your return on equity? But you're so worried about the cash flow and fixing the laundry sink, that you're not really engaging in that. And finally, you don't have time for your family, for your friends, and for your hobby. I think for most of us, we got into real estate because we wanted a better life. We wanted to have a better future. And if real estate is taking that away from you, that defeats the original goal. So then it's time to fix something. So let's say you have made the decision to move to professional property management. There is basically two choices here. You can grow your own property management to a scale and size where you can, where it becomes its own business. A lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of, but a handful of people in Milwaukee have done that. So they manage their own portfolio, but they also manage other properties. That has the advantage that you basically leverage the skills that you're building for your own portfolio, but you're gaining scale and economies of scale by also managing for other people. So that is certainly a possibility. The other possibility is to say, okay, I don't want to go down that route. I have something else to do with my life. I want to outsource that and hire professional property management, because there's one thing that I can tell you. It is not a very enjoyable business. Your property manager is earning their money in not in an easy way. So you might just decide to outsource this. And if you do that, it's not all or nothing. So, initially you might think of, oh, should I give them property management? But you don't have to hand your entire portfolio over. You can start small. You can outsource a package. Let's say you have a few properties that are on the other side of town and it's really difficult for you to get there, or you have some properties that always give you headaches for some reason. Start with those, single that out from your portfolio and say, okay, this property or these three properties, why don't I test drive a property manager, or maybe two of them, and just see how it goes. It's a big risk to just go from 100% self-management to handing it over to a property management company and hoping everything goes well. So this way you can try it a little bit for half a year and see how you like that, see how that goes. And also discuss your level of involvement with your property manager. I don't think that all of them are running in a very rigid way, all or nothing. I think a number of property, I know a few of them that will actively say, well, how do you want to be involved? So maybe you still want to do your own lease ups, or maybe you still want to do the final interview with your tenants. That, I do that. Before we sign a lease, I take a last look because it's important on, who we're placing in our properties. So I don't want to give that up. So you can discuss that and see how that works. And that's basically it. Before we get to the Q&As, let me just quickly give you a heads